you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I know. I'm so happy that we're having you. We're just having such a good time just before saying that we have so many things to celebrate. So I'm
Right.
happy to have you on this podcast, the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast, to celebrate. This is a
Yes.
special series, a success story series. So you are invited as a success story entrepreneur because we want to share your story so that we can inspire other women or other entrepreneurs that want to go on that journey, and we all learn from each other. And so whenever we have something interesting to share, we love to interview people that have gone through a very successful journey so that we can all learn from that. I know it's like,
It's weird for myself, like, yeah. Yeah.
I know how it feels, but you're always a success story for someone else, right? So it's always very subjective. But yes, you have gone through a very successful journey, and we're going to talk about that. But before that, I want to introduce all of you to Rachel, to our guest, so that you know what she does and who she is before we dive into the questions that we have prepared for you today. So Rachel Oren is Israel's first certified facilitator of trauma center trauma sensitive yoga. She specializes in helping survivors of complex trauma connect with, heal, and reclaim their bodies in the aftermath of trauma. Rachel has a private clinic in Tel Aviv, and she also works in collaborations with women's shelter, mental health treatment clinics, NGOs, and nonprofits that help survivors of different traumas. Rachel also leads professional workshops and training for both yoga teachers and mental health professionals to know how to use this unique method, and dreams of one day opening up her own center. So this is the first in Israel, right? You're the first certified facilitator of trauma centers. So before we go into your business journey or entrepreneur's journey, can you take us back to when did you decide to become a certified facilitator? How did you get introduced to that concept? And what did you do to become Israel's first certified facilitator of trauma center and trauma sensitive yoga?
Right. So, okay, I originally became a facilitator in 2017, and this was after years of teaching mainstream yoga, vinyasa, ashtanga, a lot of the classical styles that you get in studios, and feeling pretty empty afterwards. It didn't fulfill me. I wanted to transcend what we were actually doing and kind of reach someone on a different level of their life than I felt that I was doing. That put together with the fact that, I have my own story of trauma and adversity and how that impacted my body and the relationship I have with my body and how that plays into my life, really drew me towards it. And it was actually in 2014, so several years prior to when this actually happened. I was reading a book called Overcoming Trauma Through Yoga, which was written by my teacher, David Emerson. And it was the first book in the world on this style of yoga called Trauma Center Trauma Sensitive Yoga. It's a really long name. We could call it TCTSY for short. It talked about a specific methodology, a specific protocol of using yoga to help survivors of complex interrelational trauma. So any kind of interpersonal violence between people. So that helps them reconnect with or discover or develop a healthier relationship with their body in the healing framework. So that's how I kind of became introduced to it. And at that moment I was reading the book, kind of the penny dropped. And that's when I was like, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know like what puzzle pieces need to come together to make this happen, but it will happen. I don't have any answers, but it was like something I knew in my bones. Fast forward to 2017, I'm actually not working in yoga at all. I'm working in a fundraising department of a trauma center. And I had identified a grant for this. And so this organization actually sponsored me to go and get trained. And it happened that the training, the first part of the training, happened to be right next to, like, the weekend following my brother's wedding in Toronto. So I was already going to be there. So it was just like all these things falling into place. And so I did it. It was a year-long training in this specific way of using yoga, which is very, very, very different from anything that you see in studios, because it's not based on yoga philosophy from the East. It is based on a Western psychological understanding of how mental health is impacted as a result of trauma, and specifically how changes happen in our entire system that contribute to our body relationship, our sense of self-concept, and just how we navigate ourselves in the world. So that's essentially how it happened. And in 2017, I finished and I jumped right in. I was doing it part-time then for a few years, and in between which I became a mother to 2 kids, so there was like that thrown into the mix as well. And yeah, it's only grown bigger and bigger. And then we of course met each other. We crossed paths at the time that I was officially a few months into being full-time, and looking to grow, but not really sure the best way forward to do it. I'd already grown in reputation to a certain point, but in terms of like tangible growth, both revenue, both work, and all the different spectrums of running a business, that had yet to happen, and I wasn't really sure what the next steps were. And so that really kind of brought me to today, which is I'm in a very different situation now than I was, when I first started,
Right.
which is like night and day. And
Right.
also just like less than a year ago, if I think about it, like it's really grown.
So we're going to talk about it, and I know I want to talk about all the aspect of your growth. But before we even jump into the business aspect, I just want to take you back to understanding how this is a very new concept, what you're bringing to Israel, because basically, when I think when a lot of people think about trauma, we think therapy, right?
Yeah.
We think going to a therapist, or we think going to a healer, someone who is going to help us, with our trauma. And when we think yoga, we think, moving your body, for yoga purposes, right? So from what you're saying, it's basically bringing both together, right? It's bringing the trauma, not only the therapy work with words, but also with body. Is that what you're explaining?
Yeah. So it takes into very deep consideration that the reality is of anybody who has been in a state of chronic survival, it takes an impact on your body, either whether it's directly or indirectly, right? In situations of abuse, we know, like, obviously it's very, very direct, but there's also something called the trauma of absence. So someone who is not cared for, who does not have interaction with people, who does not have food at home, who does not get cared for, those are all things that impact your body as well, your relationship to it, and of course, your relationship to other people.
Right.
There's a whole kind of thing I call it a thing. I'm sure there's a much more sophisticated word for it, but like there's a whole concept in therapy of certain therapies being top down. So that's anything that uses your executive functioning, your ability to analyze, your ability to recall and to remember, to talk about it, to process, to make meaning out of it. So anything really talk related. And then there's bottom up. And that relates to your body. So body work, doing things, and there's different ways of working with your body depending on what you're, seeking, but different ways of relating to your body in a way that the perception your body has comes first before your mind can come online and really start dictating what's what and telling you how you feel. Right. And so that's kind of the very quick and to the point description of top down, bottom up, but this would classify as bottom up. And over the past decade, there's been so much research, so many books, and just mountains and mountains of I don't know what evidence, if for lack of a better word, of how much body work needs to be an integral part of trauma therapy. That is just not, it's excluding an enormous part of a person's existence to just focus on, the talk therapy, even if that is the primary way forward.
Right. But that explains also how what you offer can help people that obviously have trauma, but also can help professionals that are helping people that have traumas, right? And I think that this is, when we first met, you and I think that this is what one of the first discussions that we had, which was you were focusing on helping people with trauma, which was a natural way to look to help people that, you know, you have a tool, you have a method, you have an expertise, and you want to help people that have trauma. But then I would like you to explain this shift that you went through, because like we said just before, I think that this is a shift that a lot of people, when they start their business or when they start wanting to go out and help people, they think that, of course, helping the, what we call in business terms, the end user, right? The person with the trauma, the person that actually needs your service, is the only way to do. But then once we looked at all the possibilities, we found out that there was another business model, another way that you could also help people, and that, you know, actually became what you decided to focus on. Can you take us back to when you were not sure which way to focus and how you made this decision?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, up until we started working together, I was focused on, you know, the individuals, the people with the trauma histories who would come to me because they have identified on their own independently that this is something that they need. And that's all fine and well. You know, I went down the rabbit hole with social media and kind of chasing my tail, trying to figure out how to reach these people, completely, not completely, but like 90% ignoring the fact that really where I should be putting that attention and focus is on the therapists, on the mental health clinics, on the professional, you know, therapeutic frameworks, where there might be a team of multiple people who then have, you know, access to who knows how many clients who are possibly seeking this, who they can refer to, who they can integrate, you know, into their session in whatever way they feel is appropriate. And it's a much more solid way of getting to people in a way that carries meaning. And when I say meaning, both in terms of for the client themselves, they have built trust and a safe relationship with their therapist. That therapist is their point person for anything, you know, healing and recovery related. So when the therapist is the one to introduce me to the whole, you know, picture, it carries a different weight versus, oh, I just saw this person, you know, I don't know, a post on Facebook or something like that. I mean, I've had people approach me for that too, but it's few and far between. And it's also just a much more steady, reliable, and safe way of working. In terms of both frequency of referrals, safety, you know, I know they have someone to speak to. I know they have somewhere to go and unpack some of the situations or experiences they might have with me, even though I offer them support and, you know, psychoeducation. I'm not myself a therapist. I'm not myself a licensed mental health care professional. So it's important that they have that. And working that way, the response I had was immediate and shocking. Like it was not something that I expected. Sometimes it can feel very overwhelming to approach these people. You know, they all have these, you know, lineups of letters after their names, and this person's been the head of that research department or whatever. So it can be sometimes a little bit like, hey, but I was very, very happily surprised by how like warm and welcoming and like, yes, tell us more, they were. And many of those people are now my biggest cheerleaders. They really, I tell them I'm doing something, they pass it on in all of their, you know, WhatsApp groups to all of their colleagues. And it really doesn't take very much now for me to market myself beyond reaching out to these people who know me and have established a relationship with me. And yeah, so it changed everything.
Changed everything. So it's interesting because when we hear you talk like this, we're like, yeah, of course, that's obvious. I mean, why do we even need to speak about it? Because it should be the first place that you should have gone, or it sounds so obvious, but I do want everyone that listens to understand the struggle that was behind it, right? Because there was a reason why you didn't go first, and what we call this business model is a strategic partners business model, right? So B2B versus B2C, right? Business to consumer, which would have been the people that have a trauma that you would have offered, and like you said, would be very difficult to identify where they are, because people don't go around the street with a banner saying I have a trauma, it's kind of difficult to identify. And then the B2B model, which is the business to business, which is in your case organizations or mental health clinics, that was much easier to identify, of course, and to, like you said, build relationships. And so when we look at it like that, it sounds so obvious, but there was a mindset shift to overcome. There was something that you had to do, a work that when we started working together, you had to overcome this mindset. Can you describe why was it a shift that you had to do?
Yeah, I think, looking back on it, it was just a belief, I think. Okay, let me back up. When we talk about, things, or you should have known, or it should have been obvious, when you are invested in your own personal business and you care about it so much, sometimes you just don't see the forest for the trees. Like, you just don't see what's in front of you. And that was really the case. And I had completely bought into this belief that, well, I should be able to go outside and hold a sign up and everybody will just come running. Like, it's I should be able to do one post on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and I'll just have tons of followers, because that's just the way it works. Like, there's so many people out there. The world is big. Meeting my quota for the amount of private clients I want per week shouldn't be an issue. But in my field, in my niche market, it was an issue. And a lot of it had to do with not just the what I offer, but also the positioning of myself in the market. So, reputation. People aren't just going to go to anybody. They're not just going to go because, you have some fancy pictures or whatever. And it was a real struggle for me to come to terms with that, because it meant I had to operate in a completely different way. I had to completely change how I thought about myself, the process I'd go through in order to get to the point that I'm actually working with the clientele. Right. The different kind of structures in my business that I would have to set up, and the different systems and processes that people would go through. And also just, keeping my eye on the long term versus the short term. Mm-hmm. Long term payoff and stability and growth versus the short term influx of maybe revenue, or feeling like you're getting somewhere when really it's kind of you're treading water. Right. So, which is fine at times. Like, at times that's totally legit and okay. But yeah, it was a big shift in that, and it caused me, no small amount of anxiety, because it was like, stepping off a diving board. But at the end of the day, it's not, how do I say this? It's, in the best of ways, it's not magic. It's strategic. Right. There's a reason why that, for me in my business, and probably in a lot of other people's businesses too, depending on what they do, is the most beneficial way forward at this point in time. That doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the endpoint clients at all, but it just means that that's not where 100% of my focus is. I've switched it. Now I have, I say, 80% of my focus on strategic partnerships and 20% over here. So
what I love about the way you're describing, and also your journey through that understanding, is that it was a challenge, because you had also what happens, and you're right, there's the short term, long term. What happens when we work with end users, there is like an instant gratification. Because one person is saying yes, and so you have them for a number of hours, whether it's for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. But yes, you have an instant gratification, but you don't realize that you have to redo this every client to have another for 3 months or for 6 months. Whereas when you do have a deal with a strategic partner, yes, it does take longer because it's bigger organizations and they're back and forth. But once you have a deal, then it could be for many years, and you are inside the structure, and people, if you do a good job, and that's the case, and if you had a good reputation, then you not only gain in expertise and in name, but you also have really constant revenue, something that is more stable, that comes back every month, right?
Yeah, for the most part. And I mean, some people take me for shorter engagements, sometimes for longer, but yeah, I mean, that instant gratification, it's smoke and mirrors, I find. Like, in the same way that you can get that same sense of like that same pumped up sense from a post that gets 1 million likes,
right?
Nothing actually comes from it. Like, it's and again, I'm not saying that to like denigrate social media at all, or for offering those short-term things. But again, that was the shift I had to go through, and I so bought into those other aspects of what I thought running a business was, that I hadn't realized what was in front of me.
Right. And so, yes, we saw this transformation. We saw you become, going from being a service provider to having a real business. And that was really what you went through in the Born to Do Business program. So I'm going to ask you if you can go back to this process, because you're still in the program, but you've been for a year in the program. And so you decided to continue. Can you pinpoint what was in the program, what is in the program that helped you go from being a service provider to being, like we say, quote unquote, a real business owner? Can you identify what was it that really helped you make that transformation?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really pushed me in that direction was actually the thing that like made me very nervous at the beginning, was that you are immediately introduced to all of the different working parts of what a business is. Things that I didn't even know about, things that I had never done before, things that I'm still, obviously working on and continuing to improve. But I found that my mindset, or just perception of myself, changed in the doing. Like, in the actual doing of each one of these things and holding myself accountable to getting it done. It changes how you view yourself. It changes how you wake up in the morning and how you plan out your day, week, month. And so that's one thing. I think all of the tutorials, all of the different group sessions that we do where you're holding each other accountable, the accountability buddy is like gold. It's a gift. It's just, that is made such a huge impact, and like, I have an amazing accountability buddy. So in the doing of it.
Can you give us an example of something that you do now that you wouldn't have done before, and that really changes your identity as a business owner? Can you give us an example?
Financials.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes. Yeah. So that was, financials was a dirty word once upon a time. It was, I took the route of an ostrich with a head in the sand, that like, I can't see it, I can't hear it. That means it's not there. That means everything's okay. And it's okay to like be in a place where your financials are not what you want them to be. Like, it's okay. It's okay. You have to start from somewhere. Right. And, it's something I'm still continuing to work on and improve, but it's something that I'm integrating more and more, and that I'm becoming more and more fluent and comfortable in. And to the point that, I have my moments when I think, ugh, gross. But I also have many other moments that I'm like, wow, I actually feel in control. And like, I can kind of see the trajectory of what's happening right now. And I can see the ups and down periods. And I know now from this that my next Q3 is a downtime for me. It's a time where I can expect lower revenue. And so I can plan for that. And so again, that's an example of how just looking at numbers, just understanding the patterns of numbers and being able to associate them with what's going on helps you in other ways of your business that ultimately gives back to your own sense of self as a business owner. And so, yeah, and just like in any small business or purpose-driven business, it's your baby. It's your life. It's an extension of yourself. And so in trying to grow that, in the same way that probably any parent would tell you, it forces you to come face to face with the things that you find difficult, the things that trigger you, the things that make you anxious, the things that make you say, what am I doing? But likewise, the things that make you wake up and say, wow, I would not choose a different life. And I am so happy that this is what I'm doing and that I can wake up in the morning and decide what my schedule is, decide what my priorities are, go do my thing, and then come home, go to bed at night and know that like my successes are mine, my failures, if we want to call it that, are mine, my challenges and everything along the way, they're mine, and as a result of the work and effort that I put in. And so that's yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, you spoke about the groups, and the group dimension, the tutorials, the accountability buddy. I have to say that you have been, and you still are, someone that comes to almost every meeting, every call, every group. And this is something I always say, like when you are so committed to, even when you don't have the right mood or you're tired, or we all have, things that happen and we feel overwhelmed, and we can choose the way we react, right? Being an entrepreneur can challenge you, and we can choose. We can say, you know what, forget it, just going to bed. Or we can say, no, I'll go on a call and I'll try to see who can help me and how. And I find that this shows also the commitment to your business, because your commitment to yourself shows, how you also know that there is a potential in this business, and that you know that you will be successful and that you already are successful. But we always are, looking at the next step. We're never happy with where we are. It's always like, I want more, and that's okay. That's fine. That's our drive. But today, I mean, that's what we said when we started. We have what to celebrate, because today you are, I think, almost a year into this strategy of building strategic partnerships and building relationships and building for the long term. And we've been with you through the ups and downs of people not answering, or all the kind of things we can go through. And today, I can see really from your smile, and I know also that you're starting to see the fruits of this hard work. So can you share with us? We want to celebrate with you. What are the fruits? What are you seeing happening?
So on I have multiple different contracts, concrete, signed, done deal for the fall. I'm going to be very, very busy in the fall with multiple different organizations. I think 1, 2, 3, at least 4 different organizations, between which there's going to be 6 different groups, maybe 7 if I'm not mistaken. And then in between that, I'm getting more and more just individual leads for consult calls and things like that from endpoint people who have heard of me. I do a lot of awareness work and presentations, and so I'm going to be participating in the Trauma and Mental Health Conference in Jerusalem, and so that's really exciting too. But from like people get to know me, and so I wish I were at liberty to disclose the names of who I'm going to be working with, but I'm not yet. But very, very soon it will be announced, and I'm going to be in Jerusalem. I'm officially going to start working in Jerusalem in addition to Tel Aviv and the surrounding area, which is something I have wanted to do for years, but just hadn't gone through the strategic steps to get myself there. But yeah, I hope that's not too like mysterious or abstract, but
no, we can see from your smile, and we can see from your, you're being very authentic and being very yourself. And I know that, this wasn't like, just a drive in the park, because yes, you had to work hard and you had to reach out to those people. And for 6 organizations now, it's probably double or triple that you contacted. And so, yes, it is work. But what I love about, your success story is that when you shifted your strategy, you had to be patient to be able to say, okay, I'm shifting my strategy. I'm building on the long term, and I'm hoping, praying, and of course doing projections that it's going to happen. And now you see the fruits of that effort, and that's why I'm so happy for you, because it was the right strategy. You knew it, but it's never the same to know it and to see the results, to see the signed contract and the signed deals. So that was really, really impressive. And I'm so happy that also this is also positioning you as an expert with those institutions. And it's doing, like you said, it's ripple effects with other people that come as one-on-ones or end users, clients that are hearing from you. And so, yeah, it's really, really impressive. So I'm going to ask you one last question that we ask at the end of a success story interview. I'm very happy that I have been part of all our team of experts and the team in the Born business. We've been with you on that journey, but I'm sure some people, listening and they're like, okay, but, how did the program really help? Like, I'm not really convinced that, maybe she would have done it by herself. And maybe, that's always a possibility. But what would you say to someone who's still questioning the need for having someone, whether a mentor or a program or a group of people to do this with?
Yeah, I would say that if you have a business that you want to do that wakes you up in the morning, then, I mean, this program is the best investment that you could possibly make into your business. Regardless of whatever stage you're at. I mean, I was at the start of the growing stage, but it gives you the practical knowledge, the getting your hands dirty, school tools. I tried to say skills, but it ended in schools. You meet amazing people. You get really, really good guidance in terms of how to strategize, how to plan, how to, what your services or products are and how to market that, what your best marketing steps forward are. And just so much more. I mean, things that you get what you don't know, in the way that I kind of entered it. And I think so many other people along the way after me, everybody comes in and they all on that first group meeting are like, and everybody else who's come before them has said, like, don't worry, breathe, it'll settle. But that's an indication of how much you're getting. And there's constant support, both, from you and the team, but also the other group members, the other participants, which is huge. I mean, we all may have different businesses, but we all go through the same, emotions and ups and downs and challenges and self-doubt. So that's big. And yeah, it's like a first-class ticket to developing the best business that you can. And so that's what I would say, in the same way that when you go out with your own business, you have to take a leap of faith that your business will be successful. And it's the same thing. If you're ready to do it seriously, to get out there and to make it happen, then absolutely, hands down.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so happy we're on this journey together. Thank you. It's amazing to see the process and to see you becoming, like you said, this real business owner. And I'm so happy about the finances, because I remember in the beginning where it was like, don't show me an Excel spreadsheet, don't show me numbers. And we all know that it's not possible to manage a business without numbers. And so you did it. You decide, you roll up your sleeves and you said, I'm going to become that business owner. I'm going to learn what I don't know. And I'm going to really be with that identity all the way. And I think that you can really be proud of yourself for that.
Thank you. And thank you to you too. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who's been listening. We love having those success stories interviews, because it really shows examples of how, whether you already have a business or you're thinking to open a business, you can all become that. You can all go through those processes. Of course, it's not, always rose and sunny, and it's ups and downs and it's challenges. But all those success stories, and Rachel in particular, are here to show you that it's possible. So thank you so much. And I will say to everyone, thank you, and see you next week for another episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast. Thank you, Rachel. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.